Hello everyone, my name is Richard from Seneca, and thank you very much for all of you for joining me on today's webinar on Seneca, the integration that we have with Microsoft Teams and also Google Classroom. So I'm going to talk you through a few different areas in this session. So first of all, I'm going to cover exactly what it is that Seneca offers in terms of the integration. So first we'll give a bit of a rundown of what we actually do and what we are to make sure that everyone's on the same page with that. And then I'm going to go straight into the platform and show you what Seneca actually looks like from a sort of teacher perspective, and how you can make the most of it and making sure that that works. I'm hearing that some people are suggesting that you can't hear me. If that's the case, okay, Karen's giving me a thumbs up. Thanks, Karen. So yeah, so you can hear me, which is great. Hopefully, just double check your sound if you can't hear me. So I'm going to, as I say, run through what you can do with Seneca in terms of the integration with classrooms and Teams, and show you how that works. But then I'm also going to give you a full demo of the different stuff that works on the platform as well. So I'm going to go straight in and share my screen with you. Just to say that this will be streamed on YouTube. If you don't want, when I'm sharing my screen, only my face will be visible. But if you don't want your face visible in the other times on YouTube, please just turn off your video. But if you don't mind, that's absolutely fine as well. If you want to ask questions, what I suggest is there's a chat feature which quite a few of you have found down the bottom there, which is excellent. So if you just click on chat, and then you'll be able to ask any questions. What I'll do is towards the end of the session, I'll come back and have a look through, and I'll answer the ones that I think will probably be most useful to people, so that we can get all those covered for you, and obviously give you an opportunity to ask any questions. So keep them coming in as I'm talking. Don't feel like you need to wait until right at the end, and then I'll come back and have a look at them towards the end. So I'm going to share my screen with you now. Just give me 1 second. So, right, so just what I want to do first of all is just basically talk through a little bit about what Seneca actually is, as I say, to make sure everyone's on the same page. So we see ourselves very much as a homework platform, more traditionally thinking about when schools were happening in a physical setting, but also more and more nowadays as a distance learning platform. So opportunities for teachers to set work for their students, to monitor progress, and all that stuff you can do through the platforms all automatically, so that you can be keeping on track of your students, or what your students are up to, but also the difference between what we do and something like Google Classroom or Microsoft Teams is you are responsible on Google Classroom and Microsoft Teams for putting all the information on there. It's purely a platform to communicate, essentially. Whereas what Seneca has is it has content that you can then use with your students, and questions that you can get data from to understand your students' knowledge and understanding. So that's sort of the difference, and we can talk a bit later about how they join together, basically. So to dive right in, if you don't have a Seneca account set up already, it's very simple to set up. You just go to senecalearning.com, and there's a big button that says Teachers Start Here, and that will talk you through the process of setting up your account. But if you're sort of a bit more familiar with Seneca, you may have got to this stage where you've got some classes set up. So I've got 3 groups here, but you can also set up new groups just by clicking Create Class, and you can give it a name, whatever you want. I'll just call it Name for the moment. And what I'll do is just through the medium of this class, I'll show you how you can set up and get going with Google Classroom and Teams. So you'll see here they've got this checklist, already done that first one, created a class, and then got to add some courses to the class for your students to study. So I can go in, and this is adding the courses that we have within Seneca. So you can either search at the top here, or you can use any of these filters down the side here. So say I wanted to choose a DT course, for example, I can add that. Say I also taught a slightly old mixture. I taught a bit of French as well, for example. I can go in there and I can select as many or as few of these French courses I wanted. So there's no limit to how many courses you can set up. and these are all available for free for you guys to use. So yeah, if I add those courses, I've then got to do the next step, which is then create an assignment to work for your students to work through. So I click on create assignments just here. If you want to get help, the way you can get help there, it takes you to the relevant help page in our help center, so you can get some support if you need it. But if you just click create assignment, it will talk you through the process again. So select one of those courses that I've just selected in the previous step. So let's say I want to do this French GCSE one. I can then go in here and select as many or as few as I want of these sections. Now, each of these sections are basically like almost like a task for a student to do. So this is a session on describing yourself. It will cover all the key vocab, all the language in context and things like that you'll need to know about describing yourself straight from the GCSE spec. And it's important to mention at this point, this process is the same for any subject. I'm showing this as a French example, but all our courses are relevant to the spec that you're teaching on. And we always start when we're making a course from the specification of first principles, or if you're looking at Key Stage 3 or Key Stage 2, we always start from the national curriculum. So as I was saying, you can add as many of these as you want your students to complete, and it gives you a little estimate at the top here of how long we think it should take based on how many you select. And then you can click assign. Now, and then give it a name, sorry. So I'm just going to call it that. And a start and an end date. So again, that's quite nice. Similar functionality you get on both Teams and Classroom, as you can sort of set stuff into the future so that it will only appear for your students after a set date. And also a due date, so your students know when they need to complete that by. So now I click create. Now, obviously at this point, I've added the courses I want. I've created my first assignment, but I haven't actually done anything with any students or anything like that. So the next step is to invite some students. So if I click on that, you've got a few different options, which is where the sort of first stage of our integration with Classroom Teams come in. What I'll do is I'll show you Classroom, and then I'll show you what it looks like on Teams. So if I wanted to share this joining link on Google Classroom, I'll just click on the Google Classroom link. Give me a second to come up. And depending on how familiar you are with Google Classroom, you might know that you can set a number of different things. So first of all, I'd need to set the class I want to do it with. So let's do for this Year 9 Maths group I've got. And then I can either create assignment, ask a question, make an announcement, or create material. Now, each of those different options look slightly differently to the student, and I'll show you what they look like in a second. But basically, I think the best for inviting students to your class is to make an announcement, so it's always there and always present, rather than an assignment which will have an end date. Okay, so if I make an announcement, I can add some text, so this link will generate automatically. If I say something like join the class by clicking here, and I can also, some quite nice things up here, I can select it for multiple classes if I want, if that same class is useful on Seneca for multiple groups, or I can also just set for specific students. So here I've got my students, I could just select, actually, I just want Flavia and Jack to have it. It can send out to them, but I'm just going to select all students for the time being. And then you can also do post straight away, or you can do a scheduled post, so I'll schedule sometime in the future, or you can save it as a draft if you want to come back to it later. But for the moment, let's just post. So you then get an option to view what that post looks like to make sure you're happy with it for your students. So let's go in and have a look at what that looks like. And this is a good opportunity to show a little bit of the functionality within Google Classroom. So you'll see within the stream section here, which is basically like almost like a message board for you and your students. You'll see that link I've just posted, join the class by clicking here, that then pops up for the student. So the students will then, when they're ready, when they see it, they can click on it. And this will then take them through, in a second when it loads, it will take them through to just a message that tells them that they've joined this class. Being a bit slow, sorry. There you go, you just joined. Name, which you remember was the name I gave the class earlier. Richard Broad can now see all your progress, etc. If I click, the student will then click continue. Again, these 6 courses I added earlier, the GCSE and the French and DT courses, And then that assignment I've just set as well, it automatically pops up there, so it's ready for the student to start learning if they are ready to. So that's the process on Classroom. It's a very similar process on Teams. So if I just show you that quickly, again, just click on the Teams button, and that will take you straight to your Teams page if you're logged in. Give it a moment just a moment. Again, you can say where you want to share it to, so it's slightly different here. So I'm going to share it to my Year 10 maths group. And again, join the class here or something like that, whatever you want to say. You can do that, and then you can share it with your class. And that link has been shared. So again, if I go in then into my Year 10 maths group, you'll see this link I've just shared here at 16:12, 1 minute ago. You'll see that this link is here. And again, if the student clicks on it, it will be the same process as I've just gone through as if we shared the link on Classroom. So, so that's how that sort of inviting students works and integrating that with Classroom and Teams, sorry. So that's one side of it. The other options are you've got some class codes here and other things, but I think if you've got Google Classroom and Teams in your school, then I would recommend using these two as the easiest way to share these with your students. So the other thing you can do when you first create an assignment, you can also share that with your students. So at the moment, this is this assignment that I've set a minute ago, but say I wanted to create another assignment, I can click again on this French course, for example. I can choose a different selection of things I want my students to have access to for this assignment. I can then assign it. You'll see now the one student who's joined me is now available to select in here. And then I will give it a name again. Just give it another name. Again, you can set the start and end date in the future if you want. And then when I click create this time, it will direct me to, because it's the second assignment I've created, or not the first one, basically any other assignment, will then come up with this option to have a direct link to share to Classroom or Teams. So again, let's just show you that process again quickly. Again on Classroom, if I click there, it will look very similar to as it did before. This time it will again choose class. So let's go for this Year 9 maths class again. And again, this time I get these same options. Now, before we did an announcement, the question is good if you just want to ask a specific question, and the material is good if you want to just share like some content, I don't know, like a PDF of something, or a source in history, or some an electronic copy of a textbook or something like that. But if you want them to actually do something, these students, I think the best thing to do is an assignment. So as we're setting an assignment this time on Seneca, I think it makes sense to set the assignment on Google Classroom as well. So the sort of options look a little bit different when you set an assignment. So let's just call it a French assignment, even though this is a maths class. This is a bit of a funny setup I've got here, but as I don't have any actual students or any actual classes, you'll have to bear with me, but you could do it for whatever classes you want. You could do something like French assignment week 4, for example, and then click the link to set the assignment to complete. Okay. And then some other options on here. Again, you can choose to set it for multiple groups if you want. Again, you can choose individual pupils to set it to. If you want to set it for a mark book or something like that on your Google Classroom, you can give it a number of points, or you can just select as unmarked. And again, you can select your due date, so your students can know when it's due, and then the time is optional. The other thing that's quite useful for organising your thoughts and how organising your classroom, Google Classroom, is these topics that they provide for you. So you can basically select this topic. At the moment, I'll select no topic, and I'll show you what the difference looks like when we get back onto Classroom. But if I select no topic for the moment, and again, you can assign, schedule, or draft it and do it later. But let's just assign so we can see what happens. So again, let's view and see what that looks like. So this time in my stream, you can see Richard Seneca, which is my name on Google, post a new assignment, and the student can just click on this and it will take them to it. But it will also post on this occasion, because it's an assignment, it will post into the classwork section. So here you can see this French assignment week 4 that I've just created. And say you can rename all these to whatever you want, so it doesn't really make sense again in this example. But again, I could basically, at the moment, it's just all at the top with a bunch of other assignments, but I can actually drag and drop this into any section to help you organize your different assignments. And the student will see the same view that you do. So that's something to bear in mind when you're doing this. So at the moment, let's leave it under this section here. And when the student comes in, they can click on it. They can see the instructions, and when they click on that assignment, they will get taken straight through to the assignment, where they can just start learning here. Okay. So it's as simple as that on Google Classroom. Again, let me show you the same process, but with Teams. So again, remember, I've set an assignment. I want to just share it on Teams. So again, I can click the Teams link this time. And again, it's a very similar process. Both of these systems, I think, are very well designed, so they keep it quite simple for you. Again, share to, let's go for that same Year 10 Maths group. And let's call it complete the assignment or something like that. Whatever instructions you want to give to your students. And then you share it, and it will let you know that it's been shared. So again, if I go into that class now, you'll see here, we've had that first section, which was join the class. And then we have the one below, which is complete the assignment. So again, if a student clicks on that, it will take you through the same process as I did on Google Classroom. So your students will be taken straight to that assignment. And that's so that's sort of that. Obviously, once your students have started completing this work, you're going to be able to be getting lots and lots of data from your students about what they do and don't understand. So it's probably helpful if I show you how to access that quickly, so you can make the most of this work that these students are doing, not just from like catching up gaps and students doing independent learning, but you being able to identify knowledge gaps and things like that based on the data that we've got. So I'll just go on to here. No, sorry. Let's find the right link. Yeah. So when you've set an assignment, you have an option to see all the data. So this is another example of an assignment I've set. This time it's a business AQA GCSE course. Actually, let's go off this testing group because it would be easier to see more data on it. Here we go. So we got a Mr. Burling analysis from some English literature, Inspector Cool's course. And if I click on this, what I can then do is basically see all the data for these two sections I set in the assignment. I can see all the data for all my students and how well they've done. It's nicely sort of arranged red, amber, green, so I can understand where my students are doing well or not so well. NA just means they haven't completed it yet. And you can sort by any of these columns as well, so you can see who's done particularly well. So the student Braxton's done particularly well, but you can also see who hasn't done so well. So these three students haven't completed this first section, and then Mayra has only got 14%. So that implies to me she needs a bit more support in that area. The other thing to say is you can select different metrics. So we've got best score at the moment, but if I just change it to say worst score, you can see all the data changes. Same with average score. Whatever you want to select, whatever's useful to you, you can select from these different metrics that you want to see down the side here. So that's that. So that's obviously if you have set an assignment for your students and you want to see what data they've provided for you, how well they've done. Now, students we imagine will be doing these assignments, but also potentially working independently as well. And we also want that data to be available to you. So to get that, you go into what we call insights. And again, what you can do is then drill down into the data to see how well your students have done across the different sections. So I'll select the course I want to do. So in this case, it's just the Key Stage 2 National Curriculum course for English. That's the only course in this class, but you can add more courses if you want. You can then see, again, select from the different metrics that are available, and you can also choose the date range you want to see. So if you want to see just last 24 hours, see what happened, then that's fine, but also you can choose a custom date range as well. Let's select last year, so we see a nice wide date range. So then I want to select the sections I want to see data for. So let's say you'll notice this sort of same setup as when you were selecting the sections for the assignments earlier. So just choosing the sections I want to see data for. Let's just go for all of these. And then when I click select and I give it a moment, what I can then do is again see all this data for the students, again presented in the same way as they were in the assignments. And you can sort of sort these like you did before, and it will basically show you data based on what you've selected at the top. And say I change the date range, the data will change to reflect that. And if I change the metric, for example, again, the data will change to reflect that. So it's completely sort of down to you how you use this, but there's lots and lots of options to think about in terms of how you can get the most out of this data, and making sure that you are you're making the most of what's available, basically. So that's there. And then there's also another area you can see data on Seneca, which is this Students tab. So click on there. Again, you can see sort of the highest level data, if you like. So name and first name, last name, but you can also see learning time, average score, sessions completed, and correct answers. So that again will show you based on the parameters you've set at the top here. So at the moment, it's just this course in the last 7 days. I want to see what's going on, but you can change this and the data will change appropriately. I'm not sure if the data will load for this one because these are all made up students basically, but you'd be able to change these and see the change in data appropriately on your own students. So that's all the data you can sort of see on your Seneca account. So you can sort of understand exactly what your students been up to on Seneca and where they might need more support or might need to reset certain bits of work as well. Something else to share, linking back to Teams again. So unfortunately, this is not something that's possible in Google Classroom, but it's a really nice feature in Teams, I think. Is that you're able to actually add a specific tab for Seneca within your Teams account. So at the moment we have just posts, files, and wiki at the top here. So posts, this sort of the message board that we have on Seneca, on Teams. Files is where any files that have been shared would be stored and it's sort of easily accessible. Wiki is sort of your sort of chat area to put different bits of information and things like that. You also got this option to add custom tabs as well. So if I click here, you got a whole host of options with different integrations when they load up. So lots and lots of different sort of third-party websites that you could use that would be really helpful potentially for to link here. But one thing you can also do is link to a website. So this is really useful if you're thinking about Seneca. What you can do is make a little Seneca tab. And if I just go on to my Seneca, the bit you want to copy is this section here. So the HTTPS and then app.senecalearning.com. And if you pop that in there as the URL, you can choose if you want to post to the channel to let them know that this has happened. We'll leave that for the moment. If you click save, what you'll then do is it will create a sort of custom page within your Teams that's showing your Seneca. So here, this is the page that I was exactly just on. Sorry, it looks like a different account actually, but so yes, you as a student could go in here. This is a parent account, for example, but if you were a teacher, you could come in here and have your account up here. So you can see exactly what your students been up to nice and simply. Or sits in the same way, students could also do this and have their Seneca here. So they just click Seneca and then it's all there ready to go. So it's a really nice feature. Unfortunately, it's not available in Classroom, I'm afraid. But if you're using Teams, that'd be something that could potentially be very useful. Now, I mentioned a minute ago about reassigning work, and this is probably the last thing I'm going to share with you before I come on to questions. But you, if I go on to my past assignment, go into a class that has some assignments. So if I click on here, you'll see it, we've got a new feature that we've just released this week actually called Smart Reassign. Whereas if you click on this, what you can do is basically automatically reassign all the work for your students based on these 3 parameters. So if your students got less than 80%, you can just click here and it would reset that work for the students, or for all the sections that the students got less than 80%. In the same way, you can just reset it if it's incomplete, or you can reset it if it's less than 50%. You can also select multiple of these if you want. So you could select incomplete and less than 50%, or you could do just one or the other. It's up to you what you do. But when you click reassign, again, you give it just another name and a start and end date. And then that, what we call smart reassigns it for those students based on the options you chose. So it will automatically, when you've got a list of 30 kids, it will work out which sections or which topics the students have struggled with most, and it will automatically reassign them for the individual. So that is sort of everything I wanted to say, really. I'm just going to have a quick look to see if there are any questions that have come up. I'll just stop sharing my screen and you can see that. So lots and lots of questions, which is great. Okay, so let's just have a look through. So can students view the teacher's pages, i.e. the data, if you use it on Teams, if you use that tab I showed you on Teams? So the short answer is it depends where you share that Seneca page. So when you create that tab on Seneca, for Seneca, the data that the student will need to be able to log in basically, but they won't be able to necessarily see yours. So it's specific to the individual computer, not necessarily the channel in Teams. So they'll just have an option if they're not logged in to log in to their Seneca account basically. Okay. Okay. Another question. So again, that same question while we're on that, with the functionality in Teams and having that extra plus, the extra Seneca page. I don't know if it's something you need to unlock or with your IT team, because I think different schools have different options. Some you might not. If you can't see a little plus there, then I'd suggest it's something you need to speak to your IT team. Okay. Any more questions, please keep them coming in. So, question from Stephanie. When students have questions, do these come up over the Seneca platform and Google Classroom, and can that be changed to only be on Google Classroom, so the teacher's not bombarded with questions from all angles? So the short answer is yes. So imagine, as I mentioned right at the beginning, Google Classroom and Teams are great sort of message boards and areas to share links to things, share content, share questions, things like that. Seneca is something slightly different, where we provide the content and the curriculum linked questions, so they're ready there to use. So within Seneca, there's no message feature. So you would be using Teams and Classroom to answer questions and to receive questions from your students. And then you would be using your Seneca to set the content, if you like. So the questions will only come through Classroom and Teams when that happens. Question on the content available on Seneca from Kath. She's asked specifically if there's any Key Stage 1 content. Unfortunately not, Kath, I'm afraid. The content we do have is Key Stage 2 to Key Stage 5. Key Stage 2 and 3 is linked to the national curriculum. And then Key Stage 4 and 5 is linked to the specific examples that we have courses for. So okay, question from Kay Lambert. Do you see scores in Google Classroom? Very good question. So at the moment, our integration is basically what I've shown you. So it's the opportunity to share invitations to classes, share assignments with your students in a nice and simple way. The data will not automatically transfer. But what you can do is, if there's a functionality in Teams and Classroom where you can upload data, you can download any data from Seneca and download it to CSV. So any page that there's data on Seneca, in the top right corner, you'll see a little download CSV button. And that will automatically just download whatever data is on that page at that time, so that then you can upload it into your Google Classroom or your Teams if that's useful. The alternative is, obviously, because we present the data in quite a nice way, you might just want to use our data on Seneca as a way of tracking sort of the completion of homeworks and things like that. So the question on where you can access this recording afterwards. So if you want to access the recording and share it with colleagues or anything like that, it will be on YouTube. There's a Seneca CPD YouTube channel. So if you just search for that, this exact stream will be there now, basically. So as soon as this is finished, it will be ready to access, and you can just share the link with any colleagues that you think might be interested. So question from Royson, if you're not linked to Google Classroom or Teams, how do you manage to create a class list of children for tracking data? So what I suggest to answer that question is, it's slightly outside the scope of this webinar, but there are other options, basically. So you have Classroom and Teams as two options, but you can also have the option to share a link by email, or to share a link in any other sort of shared area that you have with your students, potentially. So whether that be something like Show My Homework, or a VLE, or a Moodle, or something like that. But then also the most sort of simple way of doing it is there's just a 10-digit class code that you can just share with your students, get them to write it in their planner or whatever you think when you're with them. And then they can join your class by just typing in that class code manually. Let's see, there's another couple of questions. So there's a few questions about premium. Again, slightly outside the scope of this session, but I'll just quickly explain what is available on premium for Kirsty and a few others. So everything I've shown you today is available for free. There's no sort of there's nothing you're going to go and try and access in a minute, and you're not going to be able to do it. So what the benefit of premium is it's exclusively basically for students. So everything I've shown you and everything we provide to teachers is free. Students, if they want to, have the option to pay for additional content. So the content we provide for free is basically we cover the whole curriculum with these courses that cover the spec. We don't only cover half the spec for free or anything like that. We cover the full spec, but we offer courses in slightly different modes, if you like. So we have courses that look more specifically at past paper questions, breaking the content down in slightly different ways, and having sort of more variety of questions available. Things like ready-made flashcards available for students. There's 10 or 12 different types of courses that become available as a premium course, which you could sort of have a look through on your page what they are. If you just go to your add courses page, you'll see all the different options. But yeah, so there's lots of different extra content for students. But then there's also some premium learning features that students get. So again, at the moment, our free courses are adaptive to individuals. So they automatically differentiate for students based on how they answer. So what that would look like in practice is if you stood behind two students and watched them going through the same Seneca session together, it would look different depending on how they answer. So that is, again, available for free. That's something we provide as part of sort of our individualized learning free package. But then on top of that, what we can do is also with premium is provide your students with something called smart learning mode. And what smart learning mode does is it gives a bit more personalization between different topics. So your students can understand where they should be going next based on the data we have. So based on how well they've done, when they last accessed different courses, and a whole host of different bits of data. We'll provide suggestions on where students should go from there. So it's almost a bit like a timetabling tool, if you like, for your students. And then you've got wrong answer mode, which basically combines all of the wrong answers your students have gone through on Seneca, and it puts them into one place, so that they can be focusing on the content that's most applicable for them based on, again, the data we have on them on Seneca. So there's sort of extra courses and extra sort of learning features basically with Premium. Question from Imogen: can multiple teachers see the data for one class on Seneca without one teacher having to download the CSV? So at the moment, no, unfortunately not. It's something we're working on adding, and hopefully it'll be something we can release ready for September. But don't hold me to that, because someone might get cross with me if I did say that was definitely going to happen. But hopefully in September we'll be able to share classes between teachers. But for the time being, the options are either, if you feel comfortable having like a shared account across a department or something like that, that can be one way that schools are doing it at the moment. Or sharing your login details. Again, if that's something you want to do, obviously don't feel like that. You should do that. And then the other option is, as you say, you can download all the data and share it that way. But actually one more option as well is if you've got, say, two teachers sharing teaching the same group, but they're sharing it, the data will, if teacher A sets up one class and teacher B sets up another class but invites the same set of students, the data will go back to both teachers A and B. So it won't be that like there's only so it won't be that one teacher can't see the data and one teacher can see the data. The data from the student will be visible by both teachers. That's another way of doing it. Rahila, a question. If you reassign the task and share it with students on Google Classroom, will the other students be able to see the task even though they have completed it? So if I assume you're talking there, Rahila, about the smart reassign thing I showed you towards the end. So when you do the smart reassignment thing, what happens is so the assignment is one assignment, but within that assignment, each student gets given a different task. Okay, so the other students won't be able to see what other tasks students are doing. They'll just be able to see what they've been set as part of that assignment. So you'll set a reassignment, like a smart reassignment task. It will then separately go out to all the different students with all the different topics that they have been set on the basis of what you've decided to set for them. Okay. So, question from Helen: can I hide my classes from this year, or do I have to delete them if I no longer teach them? Unfortunately, that's not something you have the option to do at the moment. So it's either you keep them or you can delete them. At the moment, one way around it could potentially be that if they're arranged by alphabetical order on your home screen. So if you put a Z at the beginning of each class name, it will put it to the bottom. That might be something that could be a way around that for you, but it's a good suggestion and something we hadn't actually thought of. So I will suggest that to the team. Thank you to Helen for suggesting that. Okay, question here: can students revisit particular questions or to correct their responses during a session? Can we turn this feature on and off? So the short answer is no. The reason for that is within Seneca, it automatically will adjust to the students. So as a student is answering questions, the system will pick up what the students do and don't know and understand. And there may be particular questions that are answered incorrectly by students. Students will either see similar questions or the same question or questions around that topic again, because they're basically clearly struggling with that topic. So we will re-quiz on that. So the students will have to remember their incorrect answer that they've had corrected for them. And it will then be a case of you'll see the different questions, but you can't go back and edit a question once it's been submitted. But having said that, every time you revisit a section on Seneca, it will remember what you've done previously and what you've done last time. So it will automatically adapt to what the student knows and doesn't know, basically. One question from Tia: how do you find out about prices for premium? If you want to know more about that, there's on your teacher account, there's just a what is premium at the top. If you just click on that, you'll be able to get a quote. Okay, so I'm just trying to see if there's any final questions that are useful to answer. Okay, I think I've answered most. I'm sorry, I know a few of you had a few issues with sound. I hope you all managed to hear enough to be able to get the gist of what I was saying. One more question before I go from Christine: why does the memories need to be stored in a country? So that is, it's not, the memory isn't physically being stored in the country. It's just a basically way to encourage students to like collecting these places. So sorry, just to explain the full context for those who don't know, when a student completes a session, sometimes they will basically have a chance of earning what we call a memory palace, which is somewhere in the world to basically store their work, and they don't actually have to. It's not actually physically being stored there. It's just they collect the dots on the map, and they like to collect those. So it's nothing more than that. It's just a way to encourage students to learn more on Seneca, and they seem to enjoy it. Anyway, so that is that. If you do have any other questions, what I'd say is, yeah, you can contact me on Twitter by Rich M Broad. If you want to get in contact with me in the future, I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Otherwise, just get in contact with the general Seneca page, and we will get back to you. And if you want to collect your certificate for this, keep an eye out for the email that will come in about 15 minutes. I hope to get it sent out to you, where you will be able to claim your certificate for attending this webinar. So yeah, if you've got any questions, just follow up with the team. But otherwise, have a great evening, and I hope you found that useful. Thanks very much.